At my 45th wedding anniversary party, my wife stood on stage, announced she was divorcing me, and called me a parasite, while my children cheered and applauded under the gaze of 200 guests. I felt betrayed, humiliated, but I stayed calm, picked up the pen, and signed the divorce papers without saying a word. Then I leaned in close and whispered, "Congratulations. The moment I finish signing, your luxury life ends." "Hi," they laughed. They thought I was joking. By sunrise, they would learn I had destroyed them with just one signature. I'm so grateful you're here. Before we begin, where are you watching from, and how did you find this channel? Through a recommendation search or just scrolling? Drop a comment below. If this resonates with you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Quick note: this story contains fictional elements for educational purposes. Any similarities to actual people or places are coincidental, but the lessons here are meaningful. I'm Robert Mitchell Harrison, 67 years old, and for the last 4 decades I built a financial empire worth $47 million from nothing but grit, sleepless nights, and a refusal to settle for mediocre. I clawed my way up from a state school MBA to CFO of a Fortune 500 logistics company, retired 2 years ago, with my reputation intact and my portfolio diversified across 3 trusts, 2 real estate holdings, and a stock portfolio that made my competitors curse under their breath. But tonight, standing at the back of the Sterling Grand Ballroom in Greenwich, Connecticut, watching 200 guests in black tie attire sip champagne that cost more per bottle than most people spend on a car payment, I'm not here as a titan of industry. I'm here as a husband about to lose everything. Or at least that's what they think. The ballroom is all marble columns and chandeliers dripping crystal, the kind of old money elegance that whispers rather than shouts. The air smells like lilies and expensive perfume. A jazz quartet plays something soft and forgettable in the corner. Waiters glide between tables carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres I can't name but paid for. 45 years ago, Diana and I stood in a courthouse in New Haven and promised each other forever. Tonight, she's about to rewrite that contract in front of everyone we know. She's at the microphone now, my wife of 45 years, 64 years old, and still beautiful in the way that money and maintenance can preserve. Her dress is silver shimmering under the lights, probably cost 5 figures. Her hair is swept up diamonds at her throat, and wrists the same ones I bought her for our 30th anniversary. She's smiling, and the crowd quiets, expecting a toast. Some sentimental reflection on nearly half a century together. I know better. I've known for 6 months, ever since I overheard a phone call she thought was private. A conversation with her country club friends about how one of them just divorced her husband and walked away with half of everything. Diana didn't know I was standing outside the bedroom door that night. She didn't know I started making calls the next morning. Her voice cuts through the murmur of conversation. Confident. Rehearsed. "Thank you all for being here tonight." She begins, her smile widening as she grips the microphone stand like she's anchoring herself. 45 years is a long time. Long enough to raise 2 wonderful children. Long enough to build a life most people only dream of. But it's also long enough to realize when something has run its course, the room goes still. Someone's fork clinks against china, then silence. I see heads turning, confusion rippling through the crowd like a stone dropped in water. Diana doesn't falter. She lifts her chin and keeps going. I've sacrificed a great deal for this marriage," she says, and her voice catches just enough to sound sincere. "I gave up my career in architecture to raise Marcus and Vanessa. I gave up my dreams so Robert could chase his. And for 45 years, I stood beside him, smiled at his colleagues, hosted his dinners, played the role of the perfect wife. But tonight I'm done playing." She reaches into a small silver clutch and pulls out an envelope. My chest tightens, not with fear, but with something colder. Anticipation. She opens it with deliberate slowness, and I watch 200 faces lean forward, hungry for scandal. "These," She announces, holding up a stack of papers, "Our divorce papers, and I'm filing them tonight in front of all of you because I want the world to know that I am reclaiming my life." The ballroom erupts. Gasps, whispers, someone near the front laughs nervously. I don't move. I just watch as she hands the microphone to someone else and steps off the small stage, walking toward me with the papers outstretched like a weapon. The crowd parts for her, and I can see Marcus and Vanessa at their table near the front, both of them grinning like they've just won the lottery. My son, 34 years old, who's never held a job longer than 6 months. My daughter, 31, who built a career out of posting pictures of herself online and calling it entrepreneurship. They're already counting their inheritance. Diana stops in front of me and the room holds its breath. She doesn't say anything, just places the papers in my hand. I look down at them, then at her. Her eyes are bright, triumphant. She thinks she's won. Behind her, Richard Ashford steps forward, my former business partner, 59 years old, and wearing a suit that probably cost more than his integrity. He's smiling too, that smug, self-satisfied expression of a man who thinks he's traded up. I remember the day I fired him for skimming funds from a client account. Apparently he's moved on to skimming my wife. I pull the Mont Blanc pen from my jacket pocket, the one Diana gave me this morning, as an anniversary gift. 45 years, and she still doesn't understand irony. I uncap it slowly, and the click echoes in the silence. I flip to the signature page and I sign my name in smooth, deliberate strokes. Robert Mitchell Harrison. The ink dries before anyone breathes again. I lean in close. Close enough that only she can hear me, and I whisper, "Congratulations, Diana. You just triggered your own extinction event. Enjoy these last 5 minutes as a wealthy woman." The countdown has already begun. She blinks, confusion flickering across her face, but I'm already stepping back. I reach into my other pocket and pull out my wallet, my car keys, my American Express black card. I hand them to Marcus, who's appeared at my elbow, like a vulture circling carrion. His hand closes around them greedily. "Thanks, Dad," he says, and there's no warmth in it, just entitlement wrapped in a smirk. I nod once and turn toward the exit. The crowd is buzzing now, voices rising, cameras flashing. Someone's recording this on their phone, and by morning it'll be all over social media. I make it 3 steps before Marcus blocks my path, his hand on my shoulder. "Wait," he says, his voice loud enough for people nearby to hear. "What about the rest?" The house keys, the account numbers. I look at him for a long moment. This boy I raised, this man I tried to teach, and I smile. Not warm, not forgiving, just certain. "You'll get exactly what you deserve," I tell him, and I walk out into the cool Connecticut night, leaving behind the wreckage of 45 years and the beginning of something they'll never see coming. The air outside hits me like cold water, sharp and clean after the stifling ballroom. Rain falls steadily, turning the parking lot into a slick mirror of headlights. I hear footsteps behind me. Marcus breathing hard, his dress shoes skidding on wet pavement. "Dad, wait," his hand shoots out. "Your wallet. You forgot your wallet." I stop and turn. He's 34 and should have learned by now that nothing in life is free. I reach into my jacket, pull out the leather billfold Diana gave me last Christmas, and place it in his palm. "Consider it your inheritance," I say flatly. "You'll need every dollar." I'm already walking toward the black Lincoln Town car, idling near the lot's edge. Samuel Miller is behind the wheel, 72, and sharp as the day I met him 30 years ago. He leans over and pushes the passenger door open. I slide in, and the door shuts with a solid thunk, cutting off the rain and distant voices. Samuel shifts into drive without a word. The windshield wipers beat steadily, dashboard glowing soft blue. We're halfway to the highway before he speaks. "That went about as expected," Samuel says, voice low and measured. "I'm better," I reply. She played it exactly like we thought. Public humiliation, Richard standing there like a prize. She handed me everything I needed. Samuel reaches into the center console, pulling out a slim iPad. He hands it to me without taking his eyes off the road. I power it on. The screen shows a dashboard I designed 6 months ago with Samuel's help and a forensic accountant who owed me a favor. It's a protocol scorched earth. Samuel says, "You sure you want to activate tonight?" At the top, a countdown timer reads 13 minutes. Below it, 3 categories: credit, vehicles, property. Each shows green. In 13 minutes, they'll all turn red. Explain it to me one more time, I say. Samuel merges onto Interstate 95, heading south toward Manhattan. Rain drums against the roof. And everything they think they own, the Greenwich house, the cars, credit cards, bank accounts, it's all held in the Harrison Legacy Preservation Trust. You established it 19 years ago. You're sole trustee. Diana Marcus and Vanessa are beneficiaries, but their access is governed by the trust's terms. And those terms, each beneficiary gets $85,000 annually for reasonable living expenses. Anything above that is classified as an unsecured personal loan from the trust subject to 8% annual interest compounded quarterly. The ledger tracks every transaction, every swipe, every mortgage payment, every country club fee. It's all logged. I scroll through the iPad. 12 years of expenses. Diana's spending alone totals over $4 million. Marcus has burned through nearly $2 million on failed ventures and leased luxury cars. Vanessa's content creation career has cost just over $1 million. Combined, they've exceeded their allocation by more than $4 million. Add interest, and the debt climbs to $6.8 million. And they have no idea, I say quietly. None. Samuel confirms. Every statement was mailed to Greenwich. Diana never opened them. She just filed them away. Marcus and Vanessa never asked to see a single one. The timer ticks down to 11 minutes. I tap the categories, expanding each one. At midnight, every credit card linked to the trust will be deactivated. At 7 in the morning, repo companies will reclaim the vehicles. At 6:00, sheriff will serve an eviction notice at the Greenwich house. 48 hours to vacate. All legal, airtight, irreversible. What about Richard? Samuel asks. He's not in the trust. Not my problem. But he called you this afternoon asking if Diana has any assets in her name, didn't he? Samuel's mouth twitches into something close to a smile. He did. I told him the truth. 0. He hung up quickly. I look at the screen again. 9 minutes. My thumb hovers over the button at the bottom, a simple blue rectangle with the word "Activate" in white capitals. One tap, and 45 years of enabling, of hoping they'd figure it out, all of it ends. I press it. The screen flashes. The categories turn red. Somewhere in a New Jersey server farm, automated processes are starting. Notifications queuing, repossession orders dispatching, legal notices printing. Samuel glances at the screen, then back to the road. No going back now. There never was, I say. We drive in silence through the rain city lights, growing brighter as we approach Manhattan. Samuel takes the exit for the Upper East Side, navigating narrow streets until we pull up in front of Harbor Tower Residences, a gleaming glass high-rise. I bought the penthouse on the 78th floor 2 years ago, paid cash, kept it off every record Diana might have seen. It's mine. Fully, completely, unquestionably mine. I step out into the rain, and Samuel rolls down the window. Call me if you need anything, he says. I won't, I reply, but I mean it kindly. Go home, Samuel. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day for them. He nods and pulls away taillights, disappearing into the rain. I walk through the lobby, past a doorman who nods without asking questions, and step into a private elevator requiring a keycard. The doors close. I watch the floor numbers climb. 76, 77, 78. The doors open into a foyer leading directly into my apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the city, rain streaking the glass like tears. I check my watch. 11:51. 9 minutes. The first light of dawn filters through the penthouse windows, painting Manhattan in pale gold and gray. I sit at the kitchen island with black coffee and my laptop open. The clock reads 6:47. I haven't slept, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to miss this. The laptop displays a grid of camera feeds showing different angles of the Greenwich estate. I installed the security system 5 years ago, top-of-the-line equipment with cloud storage. Diana never paid attention to it. She thought it was just another expense she didn't have to think about. I rewind the footage to 6:15 and press play. The first tow truck arrives as the sun breaks over the tree line, a massive flatbed with yellow lights flashing. It backs into the circular driveway with precision. The driver steps out, checks a clipboard, and walks to the front door. Marcus opens it in a bathrobe, his hair sticking up, confusion written across his face. The driver points to the Mercedes S-Class, Diana's car, the one she insisted on leasing new every 3 years. Marcus gestures wildly, probably yelling, but the driver just shakes his head and walks back to the truck. Within 10 minutes, the Mercedes is loaded, secured with chains, and gone. Marcus is still standing in the driveway, phone pressed to his ear when the second truck arrives. This one takes the BMW X5, Marcus's car. The driver doesn't bother knocking. By the time the third truck arrives for Vanessa's Audi Q7, Diana is outside, too still in her silver dress from last night, barefoot on the gravel, screaming at a driver who looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. I zoom in on her face. She's crying, mascara streaking down her cheeks, and for a moment, something in my chest tightens. Then I remember the microphone, the papers, Richard standing there like he'd won a prize, and the feeling passes. The driver says something, I know what it is because Samuel scripted it. Trust-owned vehicles. Trustee revoked access. Diana keeps screaming even as the truck pulls away, then storms back into the house, slamming the door hard enough that I can see the frame shake. I fast forward to 8:30. A white catering van pulls in, and a man in a chef's coat steps out carrying a tablet. Marcus answers, still in the bathrobe, looking like he aged 5 years overnight. The chef shows him the invoice for last night's event. $8,200. Marcus nods and pulls out the American Express black card I gave him last night. He swipes it. The chef waits. Swipes again. Nothing. The screen flashes red. Declined. Account closed. Marcus's face goes from confusion to panic to anger in 3 seconds. He starts yelling, pointing at the chef like this is somehow his fault. Diana appears, still wearing the silver dress, and takes the tablet. She tries her own card. Declined. She tries another. Declined. The chef says something, probably a threat about legal action, and Diana's face crumples. Marcus is shouting now. My father will pay for this. My father will fix this. No, I won't. The chef leaves, shaking his head. Diana and Marcus stand frozen in the doorway. Vanessa appears behind them, and the three of them just stare at each other. At 10:15, a sheriff's cruiser pulls in. Sheriff Thomas steps out, walks to the door, and when Marcus opens it, hands over a document. I can see Marcus reading it, his lips moving, then looking up at the sheriff like he's waiting for a punchline. The sheriff points to a line on the paper and walks back to his car. He doesn't speed away. He just drives off like this is routine. Diana grabs the paper from Marcus and reads it herself. 48-hour eviction notice. Property owned by Harrison Legacy Preservation Trust. Occupants must vacate by Tuesday, 10:15 in the morning. She crumples the paper, throws it on the ground, and storms inside. Marcus picks it up, smooths it out, reads it again. 10 minutes later, Diana is on the phone. I don't need audio to know who she's calling. Samuel. He'll answer on the third ring and tell her exactly what I told him to say. The house is owned by the trust. I'm the trustee. I've exercised my right to terminate their occupancy. All legal, all documented, all irreversible. I watch as Diana's face goes pale, her mouth moving silently, and then she hangs up. She sits down on the front steps, still barefoot, still in the silver dress, and buries her face in her hands. By 2 in the afternoon, they're loading suitcases into Kyle's Honda Accord, the only car left, because it's in his name, not theirs. Vanessa is crying. Amber looks furious. Marcus looks like he's been hit by a truck. Diana looks like she's aged 10 years since yesterday. They pile into the car, 5 people crammed into a sedan meant for 4, and Kyle drives away. I pull up the address Samuel sent me. Riverview Motor Lodge, 447 Boston Post Road. $52 a night. 2 rooms, thin walls, a lingering smell of bleach and desperation. 1.5 stars. Complaints about noise mold a vending machine that eats your money. I close the laptop and pick up my phone. There's a text from Samuel. She's trying to call Richard. Thought you'd want to know. I open a separate app tracking phone activity on lines I still pay for. Diana's number. Outgoing call to Richard Ashford. Duration 42 seconds. I play the recording Samuel's investigator sent over. Diana's voice shaking. Richard, I need you. Please, everything's falling apart. Robert, Richard's voice smooth and detached. Diana, this isn't a good time. Background noise. A woman laughing. Not Diana. Someone younger. Diana desperate now. Richard, please, I can't. The line goes dead. I set the phone down and finish my coffee. The city outside is waking up taxis, honking sirens, wailing the hum of 8 million people starting their Sunday. I type a single note into my phone. She just lost her last lifeline. The penthouse is quiet, except for the hum of the city below a distant symphony that never quite stops. I'm sitting in the leather armchair by the window, the one Diana would have hated, because I picked it out without asking her opinion. There's a glass of whiskey in my hand, neat burning going down. On the coffee table, a photo album lies open, pages, yellowed plastic sleeves cracked with age. Our wedding album. 1980, 45 years ago. I turn the pages slowly, and the faces staring back at me are younger, softer, full of something I can't quite name anymore. Hope, maybe. Or ignorance. Diana in a simple white dress. No train, no veil, just her, and a bouquet of daisies she picked up at a corner shop. Me in a borrowed suit because I couldn't afford to buy one. We got married at a courthouse in New Haven. No guests, no reception, just the 2 of us, and a justice of the peace who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Afterwards, we got pizza and walked around the harbor until sunset. She told me she was going to design buildings that would last 100 years. I told her I was going to build a fortune that would last longer. I close my eyes, and I'm back there a year earlier. 1979. A charity gala at the Yale Art Gallery. I was 21, halfway through my MBA, surviving on coffee and ambition. She was 18, a freshman studying architecture, wearing a borrowed dress and holding champagne. She wasn't old enough to drink legally. She laughed at something her friend said, and the sound cut through the noise like a bell. I walked over, introduced myself, and she looked at me like I was the most interesting person she'd ever met. We spent 3 hours talking that night. About brutalism versus Art Deco. About whether money corrupted ambition or fueled it. About the buildings she wanted to design and the companies I wanted to run. I thought I'd found a partner who understood ambition, someone who wouldn't resent the long hours or the sacrifices that came with building something from nothing. I was wrong. We got married the next year, and for a while it worked. She graduated, got a job at a small firm in Hartford, spent evenings sketching designs she'd never get to build. I worked my way up from the bottom. We had a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that wasn't quite safe, and we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. Then Marcus was born. 1985. She was 24. I was 27. One night she sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Someone has to raise our son. Not we. Someone." As if parenting was a job that could only be done by one person. She shook her head when I suggested help or daycare. "I'll quit. You focus on your career. I'll focus on him." I didn't argue. I should have, but I didn't. I thought it was temporary. A year, maybe 2. But a year became 5, and then Vanessa was born, and Diana never went back. She stopped sketching, stopped talking about buildings, started talking about PTA meetings and country club memberships and why we needed a bigger house. She'd use that choice as a weapon for the next 40 years. Every argument, every disagreement. "I sacrificed my career for you. I gave up my dreams for this family. You owe me." 13 years later, I hired a new assistant. 1998. Sharp, efficient, the kind of person who could anticipate what I needed before I asked. Diana met her once at a company holiday party, and that was enough. A week later, Diana accused me of having an emotional affair. There was no evidence because there was nothing to find, but that didn't matter. She cried. She threatened to leave. She told Marcus and Vanessa that Daddy had a new friend at work, and maybe he didn't love Mommy anymore. I fired the assistant the next day, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I wanted peace. That was the first time she weaponized jealousy for control. By 2010, both kids were gone. The house was empty, and I thought maybe Diana would go back to architecture, find something that made her feel like herself again. Instead, she spent $400,000 that year. Spa treatments in Sedona, shopping trips to Paris, a 2-week Mediterranean cruise with her country club friends. I just paid the bills and wondered when she'd run out of things to buy. 9 years later, I restructured the trust. 2019. When I reviewed the expense reports, I found it. $1.2 million in jewelry purchases over 3 years. Cartier, Tiffany, Harry Winston. She hadn't told me about any of it, just used the cards tied to the trust and assumed I wouldn't notice. I removed her name from the beneficiary list that week. She never knew because she never read the legal documents I sent her. 6 months ago, my 67th birthday, she forgot. I came home from lunch with Samuel and the house was empty. No cake, no card, no acknowledgement that I existed. I found her later that evening at the country club, drunk on white wine and laughing with her friends. I stood in the doorway and heard her say it. Eleanor just divorced Tom and got half of everything. I've wasted 45 years. She didn't know I was there. She didn't know I walked out, got in my car, and called Samuel before I even made it home. I open my eyes and look at the photo again. Diana at 18, smiling like the world was full of possibilities. Me at 21, thinking I could build a life with her. I loved the woman in this photo. But that woman disappeared decades ago. Tonight, I didn't end a marriage. I just finally signed the acknowledgement that it had been over for years. My phone buzzes. A text from Samuel. They're planning something. Marcus asked about offshore accounts. I pick up the phone, type a reply, then delete it. Instead, I set it down, finish my whiskey, and look out at the city lights. Let them dig. They'll only bury themselves deeper. The call comes through while I'm making breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, the kind of simple meal I never had time for when I was working 80-hour weeks. It's just past 9 on a Monday morning, and Manhattan is already alive with the sound of construction crews and delivery trucks rumbling past. My phone buzzes on the counter and Samuel's name flashes on the screen. I pick it up on the second ring. "Robert," he says, and there's something in his voice that makes me set down the spatula. "Richard Ashford just called me. He's backing out." I lean against the counter and smile. "Tell me." He wanted to know if Diana has any assets in her name. Asked me directly, very polite, very careful. I told him the answer. 0. Not a house, not a car, not a bank account. Everything's in the trust, and she's not a beneficiary anymore. He thanked me and hung up. 2 minutes later, Diana tried calling him. Blocked number. I pour myself a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and take a slow sip. So the knight in shining armor just realized his princess is broke. More or less, Samuel replies. I thought you'd want to know. Appreciate it. What's next? The eviction deadline is 10:15 this morning. Sheriff Thomas is supposed to clear the Greenwich house, but they're not there anymore. They moved to a motel yesterday. Riverview Lodge off Boston Post Road. He'll serve them there if they don't cooperate. Let me know how it goes, I say, and we hang up. I finish my breakfast and sit by the window watching the city wake up. It's strange, this feeling. Not quite satisfaction, not quite regret. Something in between. I built 45 years with Diana, raised 2 children, paid for every meal and every vacation, and every pair of shoes she ever wanted. And now in the span of 72 hours, it's all collapsing. I didn't push them. I just stopped holding them up. Samuel calls again a little after 10:30. Sheriff Thomas just left the motel. Diana begged for more time. He gave her 15 minutes to pack whatever they could carry, then told them if they're not gone by the time he circles back, he's calling for backup. They left. Where are they now? Still at the motel as far as I know. Diana called me about 20 minutes ago. She wants to meet. Says she needs to see the full list of assets, needs to understand what's happening. I told her 2 o'clock my office. You think she'll show? She doesn't have a choice. Samuel's office is in a converted brownstone in Hartford, the kind of place that smells like old paper and furniture polish. I've been there a dozen times over the years, usually for estate planning or contract reviews, always during normal business hours when the rest of the world was working. Today, I'm not there, Samuel insisted. Said it would be better if I stayed out of it, let him handle the legal side while I kept my distance. I trust him, so I agreed. But he keeps me updated by text throughout the afternoon. 2:15, they just arrived. Diana looks like she hasn't slept. Marcus is wearing the same shirt from the party. Vanessa's been crying. 2:20, I showed them the trust documents. Diana didn't recognize her own signature. 2:30, explained the spending limits. Showed them the ledger. Total expenses over 12 years, 7.3 million. Reasonable limit, 3.06 million. Excess over 4 million. Add interest, and they're looking at a debt north of 6 million, maybe closer to 7. I read that last message twice. North of 6 million. Samuel knows not to say the exact number yet. We've talked about this. The drama of the courtroom reveal the moment when a judge reads the figure out loud, and the whole room goes silent. That's when they'll hear 6.8 million. Not before. 2:45, Diana's screaming, says you hid this from her. I told her every statement was mailed to Greenwich. She chose not to open them. 2:50, Marcus just threatened to sue. Says you must have offshore accounts, hidden assets, something. I asked him if he has 12 years of expense reports to back up his claim. He went quiet. 3 o'clock, they left. Didn't say goodbye, just walked out. I set the phone down and stare at the ceiling. It's almost over. Not the legal process that'll take months, maybe longer, but the part where they think they can fight this, the part where they believe there's a way out. That's ending. They're starting to understand that the man they thought would always bail them out, the father who paid for everything, the husband who never said no, that man is gone. And in his place is someone who kept receipts. My phone buzzes again, this time a longer message from Samuel. Vanessa asked if you'd consider mediation. I said I'd pass along the message. Marcus told her to shut up, said you don't do mercy. Diana didn't say anything, just stared at the spreadsheet on my screen. When they left, I heard Vanessa say something about asking you for forgiveness. Marcus laughed. Diana didn't respond, but I could see her thinking. Be careful, Robert. Desperate people do desperate things. I read the message twice, then type a reply. Let them come. If they want to apologize, I'll listen. But I won't negotiate. I send it, then add a second text. And Samuel, keep an eye on the Greenwich house. If they try to go back, if they try to take anything that's not theirs, I want to know immediately. His response is instant. Already on it. Security systems still active. Any breach and you'll get an alert. I put the phone down and walk to the window. The sun is setting over the Hudson, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere across the city, in a motel room that smells like bleach and stale cigarettes, my family is deciding what to do next. Vanessa wants mercy. Marcus wants revenge. And Diana's quiet, which means she's planning something. I know her well enough to recognize the silence before the storm. Let them plan. Let them scheme. I've spent 6 months preparing for every move they might make. They're playing checkers. I'm 3 moves ahead in chess. The coffee's still hot when my phone rings. 7:30 on a Tuesday morning, and I'm standing at the kitchen counter in the penthouse, looking out over a city that's already moving at full speed. Delivery trucks double parked on narrow streets. Taxis weaving through traffic. People in suits power walking toward subway stations, clutching paper cups and phones. Samuel's name flashes on the screen, and I answer before the second ring. Marcus just walked into a temp agency on Fairfield Avenue. He says no greeting, straight to business. Vanessa's at a pawn shop 2 blocks from the motel. Thought you'd want to know. I set the cup down and lean against the counter. They're scrambling. They're desperate, Samuel corrects. I've got someone keeping an eye on both of them. Want me to send updates? Just the highlights. I don't need a play-by-play. He hangs up, and I go back to my coffee. An hour later, my phone buzzes with a text. Marcus walked out of the temp agency after 5 minutes. No job. Then a second text. Vanessa left the pawn shop with cash. Looked like she'd been crying. Samuel calls again around 10. Got the details if you want them. Go ahead. See, Marcus asked for a management position. The woman at the desk told him they had dishwasher openings at $14 an hour. He said something about his qualifications, and she asked to see his resume. 34 years old, no college degree, work history that's mostly blank for the last 8 years. She told him the dishwasher job was still available if he changed his mind. He left without another word. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. What about Vanessa? Pawn shop on Boston Post Road. She brought in a Cartier bracelet and a diamond ring. The bracelet was worth about $3,000, the ring maybe $4,800. Owner asked if they were financed. Vanessa didn't answer, just took the cash. $8,000 total. She was crying when she walked out. Financed, I repeat, and Samuel makes a sound that might be a laugh. Everything she owns was bought on credit cards tied to the trust. Technically, she just sold your property. Let it go, I say. $8,000 won't get her far. By noon, there's another update. Kyle Davidson, Vanessa's husband, filed for divorce. I'm not surprised. Kyle's a real estate agent in Fairfield County. The kind of guy who measures success by the size of his client list and the zip codes they live in. Vanessa was an asset when she had money and connections. Now she's a liability. The divorce papers came via email, Samuel tells me. No conversation, no warning. Just a PDF with a DocuSign request and a note that said he'd already retained counsel. Vanessa tried calling him. He blocked her number. Then she called me. I'm in the middle of reading the financial section when my phone rings and her name appears on the screen. I consider letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity wins. I answer without saying anything. No, this is your fault, she screams, and the sound is so loud I have to pull the phone away from my ear. Kyle left me. He said his clients are asking questions, said, I'm an embarrassment, and it's all because of you. I let her yell for another 10 seconds, then I hang up. No response, no explanation, just silence. She calls back immediately. I decline the call. She tries again. I turn off the ringer and set the phone face down on the counter. By evening, Samuel sends me a link. Audio file 42 minutes long recorded earlier that afternoon from the phone I gave Marcus 6 months ago. It's an old model, something I replaced when I upgraded, and I offered it to him when he said his screen was cracked. He took it without asking questions, never thought to check if it still had location tracking enabled. Technically, it's my phone. Legally, I'm allowed to monitor it. Samuel made sure of that. I plug in my headphones and press play. The first 20 minutes are useless. Marcus ordering food at a drive-thru, Vanessa crying in the background, Amber scrolling through job listings on her own phone and reading them out loud. Then the mood shifts. Vanessa goes quiet. Amber's voice drops to a whisper. "What if we just went back?" she says. "Back where?" Marcus sounds exhausted. The house. Your dad's house. The one in Greenwich. He's not there, right? He's in Manhattan. And everything we need is still there. Jewelry, art, the safe in his office. Marcus doesn't respond right away, and I can hear him breathing, thinking. Finally, he says, "The security system. Cameras everywhere. He'd know the second we stepped on the property." Amber's laugh is soft, almost conspiratorial. "Your dad keeps everything in that house. He always has. And the security code hasn't changed in 10 years. I know, because I used to babysit your mom's jewelry box when she went on those trips with her friends. Remember, she'd give me the code, tell me to check on it while she was gone. 4729. There's a long pause. Then Marcus says, "How do you remember that?" "Because it's your birthday, April 7th, 91. Kinda hard to forget." Another pause, longer this time. I can picture him sitting on the edge of a motel bed, staring at the stained carpet, weighing his options. Desperate people do desperate things. Samuel's words from yesterday echo in my head. "If Dad won't give us what's ours." Marcus says slowly, "We'll take it." I stop the recording and pull out the headphones. The penthouse is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of sirens somewhere far below. I walk to the window and look out at the city lights, at the grid of streets and buildings stretching toward the horizon. He's going to hand me the last piece I need. I don't call Samuel. I don't send a warning. I just open my laptop and check the security system for the Greenwich house. Cameras active, motion sensors armed, silent alarm linked directly to my phone and the local precinct. If Marcus sets foot on that property, if he so much as touches the front door, I'll know. And so will the authorities. Let him come. Let him make the choice. I've given them every opportunity to walk away, to accept the consequences, to start over with what little they have left. But if Marcus wants to add breaking and entering to the list, I won't stop him. I'll just make sure there's a record of it. I close the laptop and pour myself another cup of coffee. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. The alarm cuts through the silence like a knife. 2:15 in the morning, and I'm jolted awake by my phone buzzing on the nightstand. Security alert. Front door, intrusion detected. 2:17 a.m. I'm out of bed before I'm fully awake, crossing the bedroom to the desk where my laptop sits. I flip it open, and the screen shows a grid of camera feeds from the Greenwich house. 4 angles. The motion sensors have highlighted the front door feed in red, and I tap it to expand. 2 figures, both wearing dark hoodies pulled low, both carrying flashlights that sweep across the foyer. I zoom in, and even with the hoods, I recognize them. Marcus, Amber. They're moving fast, heading straight for the office at the back of the house. The same office where I kept the safe bolted to the floor behind a bookshelf that slides to the side. I watch as Marcus pushes the bookshelf open. The safe is visible now, a steel box about 3 feet tall, matte black, with a digital combination lock glowing faint green in the darkness. Marcus kneels in front of it, hands shaking as he punches in numbers. The lock beeps once. Red light. Wrong code. He tries again. Another beep. Another red light. Amber leans over his shoulder. her voice faint through the microphone embedded in the smoke detector. I turn up the volume and hear her say, "Try your birthday." Marcus types in a sequence. 040791. April 7th, 1991. The day he was born. The lock beeps 3 times. Red light. Still wrong. He sits back, shoulders slumping. Amber pulls something from her bag. A hammer. Small with a rubber grip. She holds it up. "We don't need the code. Just break the damn thing open." Marcus hesitates, and for a moment I think he might stop. Might walk away, might realize how far this has gone. But then he takes the hammer and raises it over his head. That's when I pick up my phone and dial 911. The dispatcher answers on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? This is Robert Harrison. I'm calling to report a break-in at my property. 447 Meadowbrook Lane, Greenwich. 2 intruders currently in the home office attempting to breach a safe containing an $85,000 Patek Philippe watch and legal documents. I'm monitoring them via security cameras. I am not on the premises. Are the intruders armed, sir? They have tools, a flashlight and a hammer. I don't see anything else. Units are on the way. Stay on the line with me, Mr. Harrison. I keep the phone pressed to my ear while I watch the screen. Marcus swings the hammer at the safe's keypad. The first hit does nothing. The second cracks the plastic casing. The third shatters it completely, and sparks fly. Amber jumps back, and Marcus drops the hammer, shaking his hand like he's been shocked. Maybe he has. I installed the safe with a secondary defense system, a low-voltage charge, that activates if the keypad is damaged. Nothing dangerous, just enough to sting. Officers are approximately 4 minutes out. Are the intruders still inside? Yes, still in the office. Marcus and Amber are arguing now, voices rising. I can't make out the words, but the body language is clear. Amber pointing at the door. Marcus shaking his head, then nodding, then grabbing the hammer again. He's about to take another swing when the front door camera flashes blue and red. Sirens. The police are here. Marcus freezes. Amber drops her flashlight and runs heading for the back door. Marcus follows, but he's slow or clumsy, tripping over the edge of the rug. By the time he reaches the back door, officers are already there, hands on their belts, voices loud and commanding. I watch as Marcus and Amber stop, hands going up, and within seconds, they're turned around. Hands secured behind their backs, led out toward the driveway. The dispatcher is still on the line. Mr. Harrison, officers have secured the scene. They're asking if you want to press charges. Absolutely, I say without hesitation. Maximum penalty. I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I'd understood. An officer will contact you shortly to take a statement. Are you able to come to the property? I'll be there within the hour. I hang up and close the laptop. The penthouse is silent again, but my heart is pounding, adrenaline coursing through me. I get dressed, pull on a jacket, grab my keys. By the time I'm in the car and heading north on the highway, the sun is starting to rise. My phone rings just before 4. A number I recognize. The county jail. I answer, and Marcus's voice comes through cracked and desperate. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... You broke into my home, I say, cutting him off. You tried to take something that doesn't belong to you. That's not a mistake, Marcus. That's a felony. Dad, please, I hang up. Block the number. Set the phone in the cup holder and keep driving. By 8 in the morning, the news breaks. Amber's lawyer releases a statement. She was coerced. She's cooperating with authorities. She's filing for divorce. The charges against Marcus are laid out in black and white. Residential burglary, Class B felony, 3 to 10 years. Attempted grand larceny, Class D felony, 1 to 5 years. Bail set at $50,000. Diana posts it. Calls in a favor from Eleanor, the same woman who planted the seed 6 months ago about taking half of everything in a divorce. Eleanor loans Diana the $50,000, and by late afternoon, Marcus is released. He goes back to the motel, and the first thing Diana does when he walks through the door is let her hand connect sharply with his cheek. Samuel calls me just after 6. It's done. Marcus has a felony arrest on his record. Even if he pleads down, even if he avoids prison time, the trust terms are clear. Any beneficiary convicted of a felony is automatically disqualified from future distributions. I lean back in my chair and look out at the city, at the lights beginning to flicker on as the sun sets. One down, I say quietly. Samuel doesn't ask what I mean. He doesn't need to. Milo Marcelo, hold on before we move forward with this family story. I want to make sure you're still here. Drop a 1 if you're Team Robert, or a 2 if you think Marcus deserves a second chance. Comment now. And just so you know, parts of what comes next are fictionalized for storytelling purposes. If you'd rather not continue, this is your exit point. Ready? Here's what happened next. 3 weeks after the anniversary party, I find myself standing in the Hartford Public Library on a Saturday morning, surrounded by the smell of old paper and polished wood. It's a refuge I haven't visited in years, the kind of place Diana would have dismissed as quaint and unnecessary. I'm running my finger along a row of spines when I hear a voice behind me. If you're after Brunelleschi, you'll want the 3rd shelf down. I turn, and there she is. A woman about my age, maybe younger, wearing jeans and a Yale sweatshirt, holding a book I recognize immediately. Brunelleschi's Dome. Her hair is silver gray, pulled back in a loose ponytail, and her eyes are sharp, the kind that don't miss much. I was just browsing, I say, which is a lie. She smiles knowingly. You're browsing in the architecture section on a Saturday morning. That's not browsing. That's research. I laugh, and it surprises me. It's been weeks since I've laughed at anything. Guilty. I'm trying to remember why I used to love this stuff. Brunelleschi's one of my favorites, she says, holding up the book. The way he solved the dome problem without scaffolding, just pure geometry and audacity. It's like watching someone rewrite the rules of physics. We spend the next 20 minutes debating whether the real genius was the double shell design or the herringbone brickwork pattern. She knows her material cites sources I haven't thought about in decades, and by the time we run out of things to argue about, I realize I don't even know her name. Eleni, she says when I ask. Elena Winters. I teach art history at Yale, and you're either a retired architect or someone who's very good at faking it. Robert Harrison, retired CFO. Not an architect, but I used to think I might have been in another life. She tilts her head, studying me. Let me guess. You're the guy in the $3,000 suit who wandered into a public library instead of staying home with your private collection. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's paying attention. She closes the book and tucks it under her arm. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from here. You buying, or are we splitting it like academics? We end up at a small place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu. Elena orders an Americano black, no sugar. I get the same. We sit by the window, and she doesn't waste time with small talk. So what brings a man in a $3,000 suit to a public library on a Saturday morning? I set my cup down and look at her. This woman I met 15 minutes ago, and something about her makes me want to tell the truth. I'm hiding from my old life. She doesn't flinch, doesn't offer sympathy, just nods like that makes perfect sense. Divorce. How'd you know? Well, you've got that look. Like you just stepped out of a building that was on fire and you're not sure if you're relieved or terrified. I laugh again. Both, maybe. It's been a rough few weeks. She sips her coffee, her voice quieter now. Sometimes the hardest thing is realizing you've been invisible in your own marriage. That the person who was supposed to see you stopped looking a long time ago. I stare at her, and for the first time in 20 years, I feel like someone understands. Not Samuel, who's been my lawyer and my friend, but never lived through this. Not my colleagues who saw the polished version of my life and assumed everything was fine. Elena gets it, and she didn't even need the full story. Thank you, I say, and I mean it. By the afternoon, we're at Lime Rock Park, a classic car show Elena says she goes to every year. The lot is full of vintage Porsches and Ferraris and Jaguars. I'm walking past a row of Corvettes when I see it. A 1971 Porsche 911T Targa British Racing Green, the paint so deep it looks like liquid. The top is down, the tan leather seats cracked just enough to show their age, and I stop in my tracks. You okay? Elena asks, and I realize I've been staring for a full minute. I wanted to buy this car in 1998, I say quietly. Exact model, exact color. I was at a dealership checkbook in hand, and Diana told me it was a midlife crisis. Said I was being ridiculous that we didn't need another car. I left without it. Elena steps closer, looking at the Porsche, then at me. What's stopping you now? I don't answer right away. I just walk up to the owner and ask how much. He names a price. $180,000. I pull out my phone, open my banking app, and transfer the money before I can talk myself out of it. An hour later, I'm also the owner of a Leica M6 camera, $3,500. A Rolex Submariner, $25,000. A custom leather jacket, $4,800. Elena watches me buy all of it without saying a word, and when we're done, she just shakes her head and laughs. Now, you're not hiding from your old life, she says. You're building a new one. By 6, we're driving down the Connecticut coast, the Porsche's top down the wind, whipping through Elena's hair. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, and I've got one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift. For the first time in decades, I'm not driving to a board meeting or a business dinner or some obligation I resent. I'm just driving, and it feels like freedom. My phone buzzes in the cup holder. A text from Samuel. Diana just retained Arthur Jameson. $800 an hour. Trial starts in 6 weeks. I glance at the screen, then at Elena. She sees it too, and she reaches over, resting her hand on mine. Whatever's coming, she says, you're not facing it alone. I nod, and I let the phone sit there unanswered. The war's coming. I know that. But tonight, I'm not thinking about courtrooms or lawyers or the family I left behind. Tonight, I'm thinking about the road ahead and the woman sitting beside me who doesn't need me to explain anything. Let the war begin. The invitation arrives on a Thursday afternoon, cream-colored cardstock with embossed gold lettering. Fairmont Country Club Annual Charity Gala. 7 o'clock Saturday evening. Black tie. I hold it up to the light, and I can almost see Diana's fingerprints on it, even though she didn't send it. The club did the same club, where she's been an honorary member for the last 6 years, ever since I wrote them a check for $500,000 to renovate the East Wing. Her name's still on the donor wall. Her friends Eleanor and Margaret and Patricia still meet there every Tuesday for lunch. And tomorrow night, they'll all be there dressed in their finest, pretending they don't know that Diana's living in a motel off Boston Post Road. IRSVP for 2. Saturday evening, I'm standing in front of the mirror in my penthouse, adjusting my bow tie, when Elena walks out of the bedroom in a black dress that's simple and elegant, the kind that doesn't need jewelry to make a statement. She catches me staring and smiles. You sure about this? She asks. Absolutely, I say, and I mean it. We arrive at 7:30, fashionably late, and the parking lot is already full of Teslas and Range Rovers and the occasional vintage Bentley. A valet takes the Porsche, and we walk through the front doors into a ballroom I know better than my own living room. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, a string quartet playing something by Vivaldi, and everywhere people I used to call friends, all of them turning to look as Elena and I step inside. The whispers start immediately. I hear fragments as we pass. That's Robert Harrison, with someone new. Diana's not here. Did you hear what happened? The anniversary party? Divorce papers. My God. I don't slow down. I just walk to the bar, order 2 glasses of champagne and hand one to Elena. She takes it, and we stand there letting them stare, letting them wonder. By 8:15, the speeches are starting. Richard Beaumont, the club president, a man in his 70s with silver hair and a voice that carries steps up to the microphone, and thanks everyone for coming. He talks about the scholarship fund, about the students they've helped over the years, about the importance of giving back. Then he invites the major donors to come forward to be recognized for their generosity. A few people stand walking toward the stage with practiced humility. I wait until they're all up there, clustered around Richard like a photo op, and then I set my glass down and walk forward. I don't wait for an invitation. I just step onto the stage, and Richard's face flickers with confusion before he recovers and hands me the microphone. "Good evening," I say, and the room goes quiet. Many of you know me as the man whose wife filed for divorce at our anniversary party a month ago. There's a ripple of nervous laughter, a few gasps, but I keep going. Tonight I'd like to announce a donation to the Fairmont Scholarship Fund, a cause my late mother championed for years. She believed that education was the one thing no one could ever take away from you. I think she was right. I pause, and the room is silent now. Everyone leaning forward, waiting. The amount is, let's call it symbolic. I reach into my jacket and pull out an envelope, the kind you'd use for a wedding invitation, and I hand it to Richard. He opens it slowly, his fingers fumbling with the flap, and when he pulls out the check, his face goes pale. He stares at it for a long moment, then looks at me, then back at the check. $6.8 million. He says, his voice barely above a whisper, and then louder into the microphone. $6.8 million. The room erupts. People stand applauding, some of them shouting, and I just nod once and step off the stage. Elena's waiting for me at the bar, and she hands me my champagne without saying a word. I take a sip and watch as Richard holds up the check for everyone to see, as photographers rush forward to capture the moment, as the applause goes on and on. At a table near the front, I see Eleanor and Margaret and Patricia. They're not clapping. They're just sitting there, frozen, their faces pale, their hands resting on the table, like they've forgotten how to move. I lift my glass in their direction, a small salute, and Eleanor looks away. The gala is live-streamed on the club's website, a feature they added last year to show off to members who couldn't attend. I know this because I helped fund the camera equipment. And I know that somewhere miles away, Diana is watching. At the Riverview Motor Lodge, Diana sits on the edge of a bed that sags in the middle, holding Vanessa's phone in both hands. The screen is cracked, the brightness turned all the way up to compensate, and she's watching the live stream, watching me stand on that stage, watching Richard hold up the check. She sees the number, 6.8 million, the exact amount they owe. Vanessa is sitting beside her, and she leans over, squinting at the screen. "He just gave away everything we could have fought for." Diana's voice is low, shaking. "No. He gave away our money to humiliate me." In the corner, Marcus slams his fist into the wall, and the cheap drywall gives way, leaving a small, jagged hole. The motel manager knocks on the door 10 minutes later, holding a clipboard, and tells them the damage will cost $200. Marcus doesn't have $200. None of them do. Diana sits alone after they leave the fluorescent light above the bed, buzzing and flickering. She picks up her phone, the one she's been using on a prepaid plan that costs $30 a month, and she dials Arthur Jameson's number. It goes to voicemail. She doesn't hesitate. "Mr. Jameson, I need you to destroy my husband, whatever it takes." I'm in the Porsche, driving back to Manhattan with Elena beside me when my phone buzzes. A text from Samuel. "Jameson just filed a motion for forensic accounting. They're going nuclear." I glance at the screen, then at Elena. She's looking out at the city lights, the wind from the open window pulling at her hair, and she looks peaceful. I set the phone back in the cup holder and smile. "Good," I say quietly. "Let them come." Samuel arrives at 9 on a Sunday morning carrying 4 cardboard boxes stacked so high I can barely see his face. I meet him at the door, and he sets them down in the living room with a thud. Jameson filed his motion, he says, brushing imaginary dust off his sleeves. Motion for forensic discovery. He's accusing you of hiding assets in offshore accounts. Shell companies, maybe a Swiss vault. Wants 10 years of financial records, bank statements, trust documents. Hearing set for Tuesday morning, 9 sharp. I look at the boxes, then at Samuel. And this, our response. Every receipt, every statement, every transaction for the last 12 years. If he wants transparency, we'll bury him in it. We spend the day at the dining table, spreadsheets filling the screen in rows and columns that tell a story Jameson isn't ready to hear. Samuel has organized everything by category, by year, by family member. Diana, $4.287 million over 12 years. Fashion, $1.6 million. Jewelry, $980,000. Spa and wellness, $710,000. Cosmetic procedures, $520,000. Country club memberships, $490,000. Marcus, $1.953 million. Failed startups, $1.6 million. Car leases, $240,000. Travel, $110,000. Vanessa, $1.047 million. Content creation equipment, $380,000. Travel, $290,000. Wardrobe, $220,000. Cosmetics, $160,000. Total spending, $7.287 million. Reasonable limit under the trust terms, $85,000 per person per year for 12 years, times 3 people, $3.06 million. Excess spending, $4.227 million. Interest at 8% annually, $2.573 million. Total debt owed to the trust, $6.8 million. Samuel leans back and looks at me. We file a counterclaim for breach of fiduciary duty. They're not plaintiffs. They're debtors. I nod. Do it. Tuesday morning, the courtroom smells like old wood and stale coffee. New Haven Superior Court Family Division Courtroom 4B. I sit at the defendant's table with Samuel beside me, and across the aisle Diana sits with Jameson. Marcus and Vanessa are in the gallery 2 rows back, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Holloway enters, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Everyone stands, and when we sit again, Jameson rises, immediately launching into his opening statement. Your Honor, this is a case about power and control. Robert Harrison used his wealth as a weapon to isolate and demean his wife for 45 years. Diana Harrison sacrificed her career to raise their children. She gave up her dreams so he could build an empire. And now, when she dares to ask for what's rightfully hers, he hides behind legal structures designed to keep her in the dark. She deserves transparency. She deserves justice. She deserves half of what she helped build. It's a good speech. Emotional, compelling. But this isn't a jury trial. It's a motion hearing. And Judge Holloway doesn't look impressed. Samuel stands when Jameson sits, and his opening is 2 sentences long. Your Honor, we have 12 years of expense reports. Mrs. Harrison didn't sacrifice. She spent. The records speak for themselves. He walks to the clerk's desk and hands over a USB drive. Within seconds, spreadsheets fill the courtroom monitor. Samuel doesn't narrate. He just lets the numbers scroll past. Categories, amounts, dates. A relentless cascade of spending that goes on until even Jameson looks uncomfortable. Judge Holloway leans forward, squinting at the monitor. She taps a line on her screen, then looks up at Jameson. Counselor, are you aware that your client spent $520,000 on cosmetic procedures over the last 12 years? Jameson stands, confusion flickering across his face. Your Honor, I was not fully briefed on the specifics. Not fully briefed. Judge Holloway repeats, an edge to her voice now. You filed a motion accusing Mr. Harrison of hiding assets, and you didn't bother to review the expenditure history your client signed off on every month for over a decade. Jameson opens his mouth and closes it. He sits down. Judge Holloway looks at Samuel. Motion for forensic accounting is denied. Mr. Miller, you may proceed with your counterclaim as a separate civil action after the divorce is finalized. This court is not the appropriate venue for debt collection, but I'll note for the record that the trust structure appears to be legally sound and properly disclosed. We're adjourned. She stands, and just like that, it's over. Samuel and I walk out into the hallway, and I see Jameson ahead of us, his phone pressed to his ear. He doesn't look our way. Samuel watches him disappear around the corner. He's going to advise Diana to settle. She won't, I say. Pride will force her to trial. Then we'll give her a trial she'll never forget. We part ways in the parking lot, and I drive north into the hills. Elena's waiting for me at a park in Litchfield, sitting on a blanket under an oak tree with a basket of sandwiches and a thermos of coffee. The leaves are starting to turn gold and red against a sky so blue it hurts to look at. She hands me a sandwich, and we eat in silence for a while. Finally, she asks the question I've been avoiding. Do you ever feel guilty? I think about it. Really think about it. And then I answer. I feel sad, but not guilty. I gave them everything. A home, an education, opportunities most people never get, and they chose to waste it. I can't carry that for them anymore. Elena nods, and she doesn't push. She just rests her head on my shoulder, and we watch a family fly a kite on the far side of the field, the red dot climbing higher and higher against the sky. It's 11:47 on a Sunday night, and I'm sitting in the penthouse with a glass of water and a book I'm not really reading when my phone buzzes. A text from Samuel. They're meeting tonight. Motel room 12. Thought you'd want to know. I don't respond. I just set the phone down, but my mind is already at that motel in that cramped room, watching Diana orchestrate whatever desperate move she's planning next. At the Riverview Motor Lodge, Diana sits on the edge of a sagging bed, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale under fluorescent light. Marcus and Vanessa sit across from her in mismatched plastic chairs, and the air smells like stale cigarettes and cheap cleaning solution. Trial starts Monday. Diana says, her voice steady, controlled. Jameson says our only chance is to make the judge believe Robert was emotionally abusive and financially controlling, that he forced us into this situation, that we had no choice. Marcus shifts in his chair. What if I testify that Dad threatened me, that he forced me to invest in his friend's startup, and when it failed, he blamed me for everything? Diana nods, leaning forward. Yes, exactly. And I'll say he forced me to quit my job, that he used money as control, that he withheld affection and approval unless I did exactly what he wanted. Vanessa looks down at her hands. But that's not what happened. Dad never forced anyone to do anything. Diana's voice sharpens. The truth doesn't matter, Vanessa. Survival does. If we don't give Jameson something to work with, we lose everything. Again. They spend the next hour writing it out. Scripted testimony line by line designed to paint me as a monster. Marcus writes, Dad said if I didn't invest in his friend's startup, he'd cut me off. When it failed, he blamed me. He said I was worthless if I couldn't turn a profit. Vanessa writes, Dad monitored my social media. He threatened to stop my allowance if I posted anything he didn't approve of. I felt like I was being watched all the time. Diana writes Robert withheld affection and money as punishment. He made me feel like I had to earn his approval every single day. I stayed because I feared losing my children. By 1:15 in the morning, they have their story. Diana reads it out loud, and Marcus listens with his head-down hands gripping the edges of the notepad. When she's done, she looks at him. Can you do this? Marcus doesn't answer right away. He just stares at the paper, and then something shifts. A memory, maybe. He was 16, sitting in my home office, and I was teaching him how to read a financial statement. He kept getting frustrated, and I remember sitting beside him, not across from him, walking him through it line by line. Assets, liabilities, cash flow, revenue. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just taught him. And when he finally got it, when the numbers clicked into place and he looked up at me with pride in his eyes, I told him, "I'm not giving you money, son. I'm giving you tools. What you build with them is up to you." He tears the paper in half. "I can't do this," he says, and his voice cracks. Diana stands, her face flushing red. "You owe me. I gave up everything for you. And you're going to throw it away because you suddenly grew a conscience." Marcus looks at her, and for the first time in weeks, he looks sure of himself. "I owe Dad an apology." "Not a lie." Diana slaps the table and the sound echoes. Vanessa flinches. Marcus doesn't move. "Get out!" Diana says, her voice cold. "If you won't help, then get out." Marcus stands, walks to the door and steps outside into the parking lot. It's cold, the kind of October night where your breath fogs in front of you. He pulls out his phone, scrolls through his contacts, and stops at my number. The personal one, the one I gave him when he was 18, and said to use it only if he really needed me. He presses call. I'm still awake when the phone rings, and I see his name on the screen. For a moment, I consider letting it go to voicemail, but something stops me. I answer on the third ring. "Marcus, it's 2 a.m. There's a pause, and then I hear him take a shaky breath. "Dad, I'm sorry." His voice is thick, choked. "For everything. The break-in, the lying, the wasting, all of it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. I needed you to know." I sit in the dark, the phone pressed to my ear, and I don't say anything for 10 seconds. I just let the silence sit there heavy and real. Finally, I speak. "Thank you for calling." That's all I say, and then I hang up. Marcus stands in the parking lot for a long time after that, staring at the phone in his hand, the wind cutting through his jacket. He thinks it's not enough, but it's a start. The next morning, I'm standing in front of the mirror in my penthouse, tying a navy blue Hermes tie, the one Diana bought me 5 years ago for our 40th anniversary. Samuel is sitting on the couch behind me, his briefcase open on the coffee table. "Marcus called you last night," he says. It's not a question. I nod, adjusting the knot. "He did. Will it change anything?" I look at my reflection, at the man I've become over the last month, and I answer honestly. No. But it's a start. I pick up my leather briefcase, the one I've carried to 1,000 meetings, and walk toward the door. Samuel follows. As I step into the hallway, I think about the courtroom waiting for me, about the final chapter of a story that's been 45 years in the making. Today I close the book. Tomorrow I start writing a new one. I arrived at New Haven Superior Court 20 minutes early, walked past the marble columns of the Family Division Wing, and found room 4B already filling with observers. Samuel sat at the defense table arranging 3 bankers' boxes of receipts. Across the aisle, Arthur Jameson smoothed his silk tie and whispered to Diana, who wore a cream Chanel suit I'd bought her 4 Christmases ago. Marcus and Vanessa sat behind their mother, Vanessa scrolling her phone, Marcus staring at the floor. At 9 o'clock, Judge Karen Holloway entered, a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for impatience. The bailiff called the room to order. Jameson stood, buttoned his jacket, and launched into an opening that belonged in a movie, not a courtroom. "Your Honor, this is a story about a man who weaponized wealth to isolate his wife, to silence his children, and to rewrite 45 years of marriage as a business transaction. Diana Harrison sacrificed her career, her identity, her autonomy. She gave everything. Robert Harrison gave nothing but a checkbook and conditions." He gestured toward Diana, who dabbed her eyes with a tissue. A few spectators murmured. I kept my face blank. Jameson continued for another 8 minutes, painting me as a puppet master and Diana as a marionette with severed strings. When Samuel rose, he didn't raise his voice. He walked to the center of the room, adjusted his reading glasses, and said, "Your Honor, I'll be brief. Mrs. Harrison didn't sacrifice. She spent. Mr. Marcus Harrison didn't build. He burned. Ms. Vanessa Harrison didn't create. She consumed. Over 12 years, this family spent $7.3 million. The trust allowed $3 million. They exceeded the limit by $4.2 million. Add interest at 8% per year compounded quarterly, and the debt today is $6.8 million. He opened the first banker's box, pulled out a bound ledger, and held it up. Every receipt, every invoice, every statement is here. Your Honor, the defense asks that you examine the facts, not the theater." Jameson objected twice. Judge Holloway overruled both times. At 10 o'clock, Diana took the stand. She recited her script beautifully. She spoke of quitting her architecture job in 1985 to raise Marcus, of feeling invisible, of watching me build an empire while she folded laundry. Her voice cracked twice. Jameson nodded encouragement from his seat. Samuel's cross-examination was surgical. He asked, "Mrs. Harrison, did your husband physically prevent you from working?" Diana hesitated. "No, but—" "Yes or no, Mrs. Harrison?" "No." "Did he forbid you from returning to architecture after your children were grown?" "He didn't support." "Yes or no?" "No." "Did he cut off your credit cards before filing for divorce, saying decona?" "No." "Did he ever refuse to pay a bill you submitted, to?" Diana's jaw tightened. "No." Samuel returned to his table. Jameson tried redirect, but the damage was done. After the lunch recess, Vanessa took the stand. She wore a navy dress and spoke softly, describing how I'd controlled her social media presence, demanded she delete posts, and threatened to withhold funds if she didn't comply. Jameson asked her to elaborate. Vanessa claimed I'd called her work frivolous and her lifestyle wasteful. Samuel waited until Jameson sat down, then stood and asked a single question. "Ms. Harrison, how much did your father provide you each month as an allowance?" Vanessa blinked. I'm not sure." Samuel opened a folder and read from a statement. "According to trust records, you received $10,000 per month from January 2013 through August 2025. Does that sound correct?" Vanessa's face flushed. "Yes, $10,000 a month. $120,000 a year. For 12 years. And you're testifying that your father was financially abusive." Vanessa looked at her mother. Diana's expression didn't change. "No further questions," Samuel said. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Marcus still sat in the hallway outside the courtroom. Judge Holloway asked if the plaintiff intended to call him. Jameson stood, glanced at Diana, and said, "Your Honor, we've reconsidered. Mr. Marcus Harrison will not testify." The judge nodded. "Then we'll adjourn until 9 tomorrow morning." I watched Diana lean over and whisper something sharp to Marcus through the glass door. He didn't look at her. At 4 o'clock, I sat in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse. Samuel joined me, ordered an espresso, and said, "Jameson's rattled. He didn't expect Marcus to bail." I stirred my black coffee. Diana won't let this end quietly. Samuel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and showed it to me. A text from an unknown number: "Tell Mr. Harrison I'd like to see him. To apologize. Please." I read it twice. "She wants to meet. Diana called my office an hour ago. Asked for your address. I told her I'd pass along the message." I thought about it for 30 seconds, then said, "Give her the address. Tomorrow night, 9:30. Samuel raised an eyebrow. "You sure? She's planning something. I want to see what it is." That evening, I returned to my apartment on the 78th floor of Harbor Tower. I poured a glass of Macallan, sat by the window, and watched the lights of Manhattan flicker below. At 9:28, My phone buzzed with a notification from the security camera in the lobby. 3 figures stepped out of the elevator and walked toward my door. I opened the camera feed on my tablet. Diana stood in the center, flanked by Marcus and Vanessa. She held a bouquet of red roses. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Vanessa checked her phone. I set the glass down, leaned back in my chair, and said aloud, "They're here." Pause right here. Before Robert opens that door, I want to hear from you. Type "forgive" if you think this family story ends in reconciliation, or "revenge" if you believe the dad revenge continues. Comment now, so I know you're here. Also, a heads up, what happens next includes some fictional storytelling. If that's not your thing, feel free to stop watching. Otherwise, let's continue. At 9:35, I opened the door. Diana stood in the center, Marcus to her left, Vanessa to her right. Diana held a bouquet of red roses wrapped in cellophane. She smiled, but her eyes were calculating. Marcus looked at the floor. Vanessa glanced past me into the apartment. I stepped aside. "Come in." They walked through the foyer and stopped. The penthouse stretched before them, 78th floor of Harbor Tower, 14-foot ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, framing the Hudson River and the lights of New Jersey beyond. The living room held white Italian leather, a walnut credenza, and a 75-inch Samsung on the wall. Calicotta marble covered the floors. Diana's smile faltered. Vanessa whispered, "How much does this place cost?" "12 million, I said. "Sit down." They moved to the sofa. Diana set the roses on the glass coffee table. Samuel emerged from the kitchen carrying a leather portfolio. He nodded at me and took the armchair opposite them. Marcus spoke first. "Dad, I'm sorry. For the break-in. For everything. You were right about the money. I wasted it." "I see that now," Vanessa nodded quickly. "Me too. I wasn't grateful. I should have been." I looked at Diana. She took a breath, smoothed her skirt, and said, "Robert, I owe you an apology. I've been unfair. I've been cruel. I want to make things right." I let the silence stretch for 5 seconds. Then I said, "You're not here because you're sorry. You're here because Jameson told you this would play well in court tomorrow." Diana's face went pale. "That's not true." "Then why did you ask Samuel for my address 90 minutes after the judge adjourned? Why the roses? Why the rehearsed tears?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa stared at her mother. I turned to Marcus. "Did Jameson coach you?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded slowly. He said if we came here and apologized, it would show the judge you were unreasonable if you refused to reconcile. And you agreed to that?" "I didn't want to," Marcus said quietly. "But Mom insisted." I looked at Vanessa. She nodded. "We talked about it in the car. Mom wrote out what we were supposed to say." Diana stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I came here in good faith." "You came here with a script," I said. "Sit down." She sat. I gestured to Samuel. He opened the portfolio, pulled out a remote, and pressed a button. The television lit up. A spreadsheet appeared, 12 years of expenses, color-coded by category, organized by person. Samuel read aloud. Diana Catherine Harrison. Total spending 2013 through 2025, $4,287,000. Fashion, $1.6 million. Jewelry, $980,000. Spa treatments, $710,000. Cosmetic procedures, $520,000. He scrolled down. Marcus James Harrison. Total spending, $1,953,000. Failed business ventures, $1.6 million. Luxury vehicle leases, $240,000. He scrolled again. Vanessa Claire Harrison. Total spending $1,047,000. Photography and video equipment $380,000. Travel $290,000. Designer wardrobe $220,000. Samuel set the remote down. Total family spending over 12 years, $7,287,000. The Harrison Legacy Preservation Trust allowed each of you $85,000 per year. 3 people, 12 years, $3,060,000 total. You exceeded that limit by $4,227,000. Interest at 8% per year adds $2,573,000. Your combined debt to the trust is $6,800,000. Vanessa stared at the screen. Marcus rubbed his face. Diana said nothing. I leaned forward. Every month, Samuel mailed account statements to the Greenwich House. You received 144 statements over 12 years. You didn't open a single one. Diana's voice was sharp. You should have told me. I told you in 2019 when I restructured the trust. You laughed and said I was being paranoid. I stood and walked to the window. You spent 12 years treating my work as an ATM. You raised our children to believe money appears by magic. And now you're sitting in my home holding roses you probably charged to a card I'm still paying off, pretending you've had an epiphany. I turned back. Samuel explained their options. Samuel pulled 3 contracts from the portfolio and set them on the table. You have 2 choices. Option 1, sign the Legacy Redemption Program contract and begin employment tomorrow morning. Option 2, walk out and wait for me to file a separate civil lawsuit. That lawsuit will result in wage garnishment, asset seizure, and bankruptcy. Diana's voice rose. This is slavery. No, Kalkan, I said. Slavery is involuntary. This is a choice. You can walk out right now and take your chances in court. Or you can sign and start rebuilding. Vanessa's voice was small. What kind of jobs? Samuel opened the first contract. Mrs. Diana Harrison, Retail Warehouse Associate, BJ's Wholesale Club, Bridgeport. $15.50 per hour. Mrs. Vanessa Harrison, Call Center Representative, Concentrix, Hartford. $16 per hour. Mr. Marcus Harrison, Line Cook, Olive Garden, New Haven. $17 per hour. 15% of your gross wages will be garnished and applied to the debt. Marcus looked up. For how long? Complete 24 months of continuous employment, and 50% of the debt will be forgiven. Complete 60 months, and the entire debt is canceled. At that point, you'll be eligible for reinstatement as trust beneficiaries. Diana laughed bitterly. 5 years, or bankruptcy, Samuel said. Your choice. I sat back down. I'm not doing this because I hate you. I'm doing this because you need to understand what you spent. You need to feel the weight of the full debt. You need to earn your way back. Marcus picked up a pen. His hand shook as he signed. He set the pen down and looked at me. You were right, Dad. About all of it. Vanessa signed next. Tears running down her cheeks. Diana stared at the contract for a full minute. Finally, she picked up the pen and scrawled her signature. Samuel collected the contracts and stood. Your first shifts start at 8 tomorrow morning. Don't be late. They walked to the door in silence. I didn't shake their hands. I didn't hug them. I watched them step into the elevator, and when the doors closed, I returned to the window. Samuel joined me. How do you feel? I watched 3 figures emerge from the building lobby and disappear into the Manhattan night. This isn't revenge, I said. It's an honest reckoning. I arrived at the courthouse 15 minutes early, the same granite steps I'd climbed the day before, the same marble lobby, the same room 4B. Samuel sat at our table reviewing notes. Diana sat alone at the plaintiff's table. Arthur Jameson was nowhere in sight. At 9 o'clock, Judge Holloway entered. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge looked at the empty chair beside Diana and said, "Where is Mr. Jameson?" The door opened. Jameson walked in, holding a single folder. He did not sit. He stood at the plaintiff's table and said, "Your Honor, I move to withdraw as counsel for the plaintiff." Judge Holloway's eyebrows rose. "On what grounds, Mr. Jameson?" "Ethical conflict. My client signed a binding employment contract with the defendant last night without consulting me. The contract includes a debt repayment clause tied to a civil matter that may arise from this divorce. I cannot in good conscience continue to represent her when she has entered into an agreement that materially affects the outcome of this case." The judge turned to Diana. "Mrs. Harrison, is this true?" Diana stood slowly. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. "Yes, Your Honor." "Did you read the contract before signing?" "Yes." "Did you understand that it would impact this proceeding?" Diana was silent for 5 seconds. I didn't have a choice." Judge Holloway leaned forward. "You had a choice, Mrs. Harrison. You chose to sign. Mr. Jameson, your motion is granted. You're dismissed." Jameson set the folder on the table, nodded to the judge, and walked out. The door closed behind him. Diana stood alone at the plaintiff's table, her face pale. Judge Holloway looked at her. "Mrs. Harrison, you may proceed with your case, or you may request a continuance to find new counsel. What is your preference?" Diana glanced at the door, then at me, then back at the judge. "I'll proceed, Your Honor." "Very well. Do you have any evidence to present?" Diana opened her purse and pulled out a stack of photocopied papers, unorganized. No tabs, no labels. She handed them to the bailiff, who carried them to the judge. Judge Holloway flipped through the pages, frowned, and set them aside. "Mrs. Harrison, did you receive monthly account statements from the Harrison Legacy Preservation Trust?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Did you read them?" Diana's voice was barely audible. "No. Well, not once in 12 years. "No, Your Honor." "Why not?" I trusted my husband to handle the finances. Yet you're now claiming he defrauded you." Diana didn't answer. Judge Holloway looked at Samuel. "Does the defense have any further evidence?" Samuel stood. "No, Your Honor. The defense rests on the documents already submitted, 12 years of account statements, the prenuptial agreement signed in 1980, and the trust charter. All are a matter of public record." Very well. This court will recess until 1 o'clock for a ruling. At 1 o'clock, we returned. The courtroom was quieter than it had been the day before. Fewer spectators. No Jameson. Marcus and Vanessa sat in the back row, both staring at their phones. Judge Holloway entered and took her seat. She opened a folder, adjusted her reading glasses, and read from a prepared statement. "This court grants the petition for divorce. The marriage between Robert Mitchell Harrison and Diana Catherine Harrison is hereby dissolved." Diana exhaled. I felt nothing. "All marital assets are held by the Harrison Legacy Preservation Trust, established in 1980, pursuant to a valid prenuptial agreement signed by both parties. The plaintiff has presented no evidence that the prenuptial agreement was obtained through fraud, duress, or coercion. The agreement is enforceable." Diana's shoulders slumped. The plaintiff's request for equitable distribution of marital property is denied. The trust assets belong to the trust, not to either party individually. Diana closed her eyes. "The court acknowledges the existence of a debt in the amount of $6,800,000 owed by the plaintiff and her adult children to the Harrison Legacy Preservation Trust. This debt is a matter of contract law and will be recorded in the court record." Judge Holloway looked at Diana. "The plaintiff is advised that any future civil action regarding this debt will be heard in a separate proceeding." She closed the folder. "This court is adjourned." The gavel fell. Samuel and I walked out of the courtroom together. The hallway was crowded, lawyers, clerks, families waiting for other cases. At the top of the granite steps, a small group of reporters stood waiting, 5 or 6 of them holding microphones and cameras. A woman in a blazer stepped forward. Mr. Harrison, do you have any comment on the verdict? No comment, I said. Samuel placed a hand on my shoulder. Mr. Harrison has no further statement. Thank you. We walked past them. I heard Diana's name called behind me, but when I glanced back, she was nowhere in sight. She'd left through the rear exit. I stopped on the steps and looked down. The same granite steps I'd climbed 46 years ago. June 14th, 1980. Diana had been 19, wearing a white dress she'd borrowed from her roommate. I'd been 22, wearing a rented suit. We'd taken our vows in front of a justice of the peace in a small room on the second floor, then walked down these same steps and taken a photograph in front of the courthouse. Diana had held a bouquet of white carnations. I'd held her hand. I could still see her face in the photograph, young, eager, certain of everything. I wondered when that girl had disappeared, or if she'd ever really existed. Maybe I'd married a photograph and spent 45 years waiting for it to come to life. Samuel's voice pulled me back. You all right? Yeah, I said. Let's go. At 5 o'clock, I opened the door to my apartment. The smell of garlic and basil filled the air. Elena stood at the stove stirring a pot of penne arrabbiata. 2 glasses of red wine sat on the counter. She turned and smiled. How did it go? I set my briefcase down, took off my jacket, and walked over to her. I wrapped my arms around her waist from behind and rested my chin on her shoulder. It's over. And them. They start work Monday morning. Elena turned off the burner and faced me. Do you think they'll make it? I thought about it for 3 seconds. I don't know. But for the first time in 45 years, what they do isn't my responsibility. Elena poured the wine and handed me a glass. She raised hers. To Chapter 2. I clinked my glass against hers. To Chapter 2. At 11 o'clock that night, I was reviewing a contract Samuel had sent when my phone buzzed. A text from Samuel. We have a problem. Ethics complaint filed this evening. Press inquiry from Hartford Courant. Call me first thing tomorrow. I set the phone down and stared at the screen for 10 seconds. Then I called him back. What happened? I said. Samuel's voice was calm but tired. Marcus filed an ethics complaint with the Connecticut bar. Diana called a reporter. I'll send you the full timeline in the morning, but here's what I know so far. What follows is the story Samuel pieced together over the next 48 hours, a story of 3 people who'd spent 90 days working calculating and realizing they'd never escape the hole they'd dug. Marcus stood in front of a commercial gas range at 5:30 in the morning. Flames roaring beneath 6 pans. Sweat dripped from his forehead. His left hand throbbed 3rd burn that week. He'd lost 35 pounds in 3 months. His back ached constantly. His chef's coat hung loose on his frame. During his 10-minute break, Marcus sat in the employee locker room and opened the calculator app on his battered Samsung. He did the math for the 100th time. $19 times 160 hours equaled $3,040 gross per month. After taxes and 15% garnishment, he netted $1,835. 3 months of garnishment totaled $1,368 toward a debt of $6,800,000. He did the division. $6,798,632 remaining divided by $456 per month. 14,909 months. 1,242 years. He knew the contract said 50% forgiven after 24 months, 100% after 60. But sitting in that locker room, staring at the burn on his hand, those numbers felt like fiction. The debt felt real. The forgiveness felt like a promise his father would never keep. Marcus closed his eyes and leaned his head against the locker. I'll be 1,276 years old when this is paid off, he muttered. Dad didn't design this as redemption. He designed it as a life sentence. At noon, he walked out to the parking lot and called Vanessa. We need to talk. Tonight, 9 o'clock. Mom's motel. Vanessa adjusted her headset at 7 in the morning and clicked the green button on her screen. A man's voice already shouting filled her ears. She'd been working at Concentrix for 90 days, $16 an hour, 40 hours a week, 40 to 50 calls a day. 8 hours of people yelling about cable bills and internet outages had worn her down to nothing. During her 3 o'clock break, Vanessa opened Instagram. A story from Jessica appeared. Her old friend, a lifestyle influencer with 340,000 followers. The photo showed a white sand beach, turquoise water, a cocktail with an umbrella. The caption read, "Grateful for this life." Vanessa remembered the message Jessica had sent 6 months ago. A fashion brand wanted to collaborate. $50,000 for a 3-month campaign. Vanessa had declined, afraid the family scandal would hurt the deal. Now Jessica was in the Maldives. Vanessa was in a cubicle in Hartford earning $16 an hour. She opened her calculator. After taxes and garnishment, her monthly take-home was $1,545. 3 months of garnishment totaled $1,152. Debt remaining $6,798,848. Years to pay it off 492. She would be 523 years old. She closed the app and replied to Marcus's text. "I'll be there." Diana gripped a 40-pound box of canned goods at 8 in the morning and hoisted it onto a shelf 6 feet high. Her knees cracked. Pain shot through her left leg. She'd been diagnosed with bursitis 2 weeks earlier. The doctor had recommended rest. She couldn't afford to miss a shift. At 4 in the afternoon, Diana sat in the break room with a $5 sandwich. Someone had left a copy of Connecticut magazine on the table. She flipped through it, then stopped. Page 34, a full-page photo. Robert stood on a stone terrace holding a glass of red wine. Behind him, rolling hills covered in grapevines. Beside him, Elena smiling, wearing a floral sundress. In the background, a British racing green Porsche sat in an open garage. The headline read, "Retired CFO's New Chapter. Robert Harrison and Dr. Elena Winters find peace in Tuscany." Diana's hands shook. She did the math in her head. $17 an hour. $1,224 paid in 3 months. Debt remaining $6,798,776. Time to pay it off, 463 years. She would be 527 years old. She closed the magazine, crumpled it, and threw it in the trash. She thought, "He's sipping wine in Tuscany. I'm lifting boxes in Bridgeport. This isn't justice. This is cruelty." When Marcus's text arrived, she replied immediately. "I'll be there." They sat around a plastic table at 9 that night. Diana, Marcus, Vanessa. Marcus had borrowed a laptop from the New Haven Public Library. 3 browser tabs were open: Connecticut Bar Association, Hartford Current Ethics Complaint Trustee. Marcus spoke first. "We've paid less than $4,000 combined in 3 months. We'll be dead before we're halfway through this debt. He designed it to break us." Vanessa said, "What if we quit?" Diana shook her head. "The contract says if we miss 3 pay periods, he files a civil suit. We'll lose everything." Marcus leaned forward. "Then we don't quit. We make him quit. We file an ethics complaint. We go to the press. We make him the villain. If we can't win in court, we win in public." Diana was silent for 10 seconds. Then she smiled for the first time in 3 months. "Do it." At 10:30, Marcus drafted an email to the Connecticut Bar Association, alleging elder abuse, coercion, and unconscionable contract terms. At 10:45, Diana called Melissa Vaughn, a reporter at the Hartford Courant. "I have a story," Diana said, "about a man who forced his 64-year-old ex-wife to work in a warehouse to pay a $7 million debt." Melissa replied, "I'm listening." At 11, my phone buzzed. Samuel's text. And I knew the war had just entered a new phase. At 7 in the morning, Samuel knocked on my apartment door. I was already awake, drinking coffee by the window. When I opened the door, his face told me everything I needed to know. "We have two problems," he said, stepping inside. First, Marcus filed a formal ethics complaint with the Connecticut Bar Association yesterday afternoon. Second, Diana gave an interview to the Hartford Courant this morning. It's already online. I set my coffee down. What are they claiming? Samuel pulled out his tablet and opened the complaint. Elder abuse forcing a 64-year-old woman into manual labor. Unconscionable contract 15% wage garnishment on a debt they claim is impossible to repay. Coercion alleging you pressured them into signing at your apartment without legal counsel. And the article, he handed me the tablet. The headline filled the screen: Greenwich millionaire forces ex-wife 64 into warehouse job to repay $7 million debt. I skimmed it. Diana's quotes were carefully chosen. He trapped me in that apartment. My children and I were starving. We had no choice but to sign. Now I lift 40-pound boxes 8 hours a day while he sips wine in Italy. Marcus claimed I'd designed a contract they could never fulfill. Vanessa said I'd destroyed their futures. The article had been shared 12,000 times in less than 6 hours. Twitter was full of hashtags, #elder abuse, toxic divorce, warehouse grandma. A Reddit thread asked, "Is this even legal?" I handed the tablet back. "Do we have recordings of the apartment meeting?" Samuel nodded. "Yes. Your home security system captured audio and video. I reviewed it this morning." "Show me." He pulled up an 8-minute clip. The footage was clear. Diana, Marcus, and Vanessa entered the apartment at 9:35. Samuel explained the contract. They asked questions. Diana asked what would happen if they couldn't finish 24 months. Samuel answered the contract would be void and a civil suit would proceed. Marcus asked about debt forgiveness. Samuel explained 50% after 24 months, 100% after 60 months. Vanessa asked if they could have a lawyer review the contract. Samuel offered them 48 hours. Diana refused. "We'll sign now." All three signed. No threats, no coercion. I looked at Samuel. "What about the elder abuse claim?" Diana passed a pre-employment physical. BJ's Wholesale requires it for all stock associates. The medical clearance states she's healthy with no work restrictions. And she was promoted to supervisor after 10 weeks. She's earning $17 an hour now. The impossible debt argument so. The contract explicitly states debt reduction. 50% forgiveness after 2 years, full forgiveness after 5. They conveniently left that out of their interview. I stood and walked to the window. The city stretched below thousands of people starting their day unaware of the war being fought in courtrooms and newsrooms. Send the recording to the Bar Association. Send the contract with the debt forgiveness clauses highlighted. Send Diana's medical records and her promotion letter. And call our PR firm. I want a statement ready by noon. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, my statement went live. I didn't do a personal interview. Samuel released it through our PR firm. Mrs. Diana Harrison and her adult children are not victims. They are debtors who over 12 years spent $7.3 million in trust funds, $4.24 million above their allocated limits. When held accountable, they chose to file false claims rather than accept responsibility. The Legacy Redemption Program was offered as a voluntary alternative to a $6.8 million civil judgment. Mrs. Harrison, Mr. Marcus Harrison, and Ms. Vanessa Harrison signed the contract after reading it, asking questions, and declining the opportunity to consult independent counsel. They are now attempting to manipulate public sympathy to escape their legal obligations. Attached to the statement was the 8-minute video, faces redacted for privacy, but voices clear. Also attached, Diana's medical clearance, her promotion records, and the contract with the debt forgiveness clauses highlighted in yellow. By the next morning, The Hartford Courant published a follow-up, "New evidence contradicts Harrison elder abuse claims." The social media tide shifted, #accountability, and fake victims started trending. Reddit threads updated with new verdicts. OP was wrong. They spent $7 million and signed voluntarily. Some influencers quietly deleted their posts. 3 days later, Samuel called. They're not backing down. Marcus, Diana, and Vanessa met at the motel last night. Our contact at the Courant says Diana's planning something new. What? We're not sure yet, but be careful. I found out a week later. Marcus had hired a private investigator, a firm called Discreet Eye Investigations in Stamford. The assignment, a full background check on Elena. Past relationships, financials, student complaints, anything they could use. The fee was $2,000. Marcus paid with a check from an account he'd opened using Diana's social security number. Samuel called me in Tuscany. Marcus hired a PI to dig into Elena. They're looking for leverage. I was sitting on the terrace watching the sun set over the vineyards. Let them dig. Elena's been a tenured professor for 20 years. Her record is spotless. What if they fabricate something? Then they'll add defamation and extortion to their list. How's the ethics complaint? Dismissed this morning. The recording killed their case. Good, I said. Desperate people make mistakes, and I'm ready for theirs. That evening, I told Elena about the ethics complaint. She laughed. They filed a complaint against you for what? Elder abuse, coercion. Sartika, and now they hired someone to investigate me. Apparently. She laughed again, harder this time. Good luck to them. My wildest secret is I once gave a student a B+ instead of an A- because he interrupted me during a lecture. I hope they enjoy wasting $2,000. I took her hand. The sky was turning orange and pink, the kind of sunset you only see in Tuscany. This is almost over. One more move from them and they'll destroy themselves completely. The next day, I received an email from Samuel. The subject line read, "Game over." Marcus had accidentally forwarded the private investigator's report to Melissa Vaughn at the Hartford Courant instead of Diana. A simple mistake, wrong name in his contact list. The report was 8 pages long. Conclusion: Dr. Elena Winters, no adverse findings. Exemplary professional record. No complaints, no scandals. But the real problem wasn't the report. It was how Marcus had paid for it. He'd used a check from an account opened with Diana's social security number. Identity theft. The Hartford Police Department was opening a case. Samuel's email ended with a single line. They just buried themselves. I closed the laptop, poured a glass of wine, and watched the sun disappear behind the hills. At 7:30 in the morning, I sat on the stone terrace of the villa, a cup of espresso cooling in my hand. The hills of Montalcino stretched before me, rows of grapevines turning gold in the October light. A thin layer of fog clung to the valley below. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang twice. My laptop was open on the wrought iron table. An email from Samuel sent overnight waited on the screen. The subject line read, "Monthly Report, Legacy Redemption Program, Month 5. Samuel's note was brief. Robert, all 3 participants remain in compliance. No missed shifts in 5 months. Performance reviews attached. Ethics complaint was formally dismissed last month, no merit found. They've been quiet since then. I scrolled down to the individual reports. Marcus James Harrison. Line cook, Olive Garden, New Haven. $19 per hour for the first 4 months, promoted to $21 in month 5. Perfect attendance. 0 absences. 0 late arrivals. The note from his manager caught my attention. Chef Margaret has recommended Marcus for the sous chef training program. 6-month apprenticeship, $24 per hour upon completion. Marcus has shown exceptional reliability and a willingness to learn. Another line. Marcus purchased a used bicycle to commute 4 miles daily, saving bus fare. Co-workers describe him as quiet but dependable. Vanessa Claire Harrison, call center representative, Concentrix, Hartford, $16 per hour. Customer satisfaction score 93%, top 5% of her team. A note from her supervisor. Vanessa has enrolled in an evening accounting course at Capital Community College. Tuition is $580 per semester, paid through a wage deduction plan. She volunteers to train new hires and handles difficult customers with patience. Diana Catherine Harrison, stock supervisor, BJ's Wholesale Club, Bridgeport, $17 per hour for the first 4 months, promoted to assistant manager trainee at $19 in month 5. Her store manager's review exceeds expectations, improved team efficiency by 12%. Diana organized a fundraiser to help a coworker pay for her daughter's emergency dental surgery. She contributed $50 from her own wages. Perfect attendance. Worked through knee pain, now using a brace provided by her employer. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. The sun was climbing higher, burning off the fog. A breeze carried the scent of rosemary and thyme from the garden below. 5 months ago, Marcus had broken into my house with a hammer. Now he was being recommended for a promotion. Vanessa had spent $380,000 on photography equipment she never used. Now she was studying accounting at night. Diana had claimed I'd destroyed her life. Now she was helping a coworker pay medical bills. I picked up my phone and typed a reply. Continue monthly reports. No changes to contract terms. If they complete 60 months, I'll reinstate their beneficiary status at $85,000 per year. I sent it and set the phone down. At 9:30, Elena and I climbed into the Porsche. The top was down. The morning air was cool but not cold. I turned the key and the engine rumbled to life. We drove south on the SP14, the narrow provincial road that wound through the vineyards. The road curved around the hills, 2 lanes of asphalt threading between rows of Brunello vines. Elena wore sunglasses and a linen scarf. Her hair lifted in the wind. She laughed when I accelerated through a sharp curve, the tires gripping the road, the engine growling. At 11, I pulled over at a viewpoint overlooking the Orcha Valley. The fortress of Montalcino stood in the distance, a stone tower against the pale sky. I turned off the engine and sat still for 30 seconds, listening to the wind move through the olive trees. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a photograph. It was old, creased, faded. June 14th, 1980. Diana in a borrowed white dress holding a bouquet of carnations. Me in a rented suit standing on the steps of the New Haven courthouse. I looked at it for 10 seconds. I thought I loved the woman in this photograph. But that woman is gone. Maybe she never existed. I didn't throw the photograph away. That would have been melodramatic. I folded it carefully and slipped it into the back pocket of my wallet, where it wouldn't be seen unless I went looking for it. Elena didn't ask what I was holding. She just reached over and took my hand. At 12:30, we returned to the villa. The kitchen was cool, the stone walls thick enough to block the midday heat. I filled a pot with water and set it on the stove. Elena sliced tomatoes San Marzano, bright red, still warm from the garden. While the water boiled, I told her about Samuel's report. Marcus is training to be a sous chef. Vanessa's taking accounting classes. Diana organized a fundraiser for a coworker. Elena smiled. Sounds like they're becoming the people you hoped they'd be. I shook my head. I didn't hope for anything. I just gave them a choice, and they chose to try. Do you think they'll finish the 5 years? I thought about it for 5 seconds. I don't know. But for the first time in 45 years, I don't need to know. What they do isn't my responsibility anymore. At 6:30, the sun began to set. Elena and I sat on the terrace with 2 glasses of Brunello di Montalcino, a 2015 vintage from a vineyard 3 miles down the road. The sky shifted from orange to violet to pink. I thought, for 45 years, I was someone's husband, someone's father, someone's ATM. I built an empire so my family could have everything, and they took everything and still wanted more. Now, for the first time, I'm just Robert. I wake up when I want. I drive where I want. I sit on a terrace in Tuscany and watch the sun go down, and no one asks me for anything. I didn't say it out loud. I just thought it. I didn't destroy them. I freed them. And I freed myself. Elena rested her head on my shoulder. We sat in silence for 5 minutes, watching the last light fade behind the hills. When the sun was gone, we stood and walked inside. The villa door closed gently behind us. Tonight, I was simply a man who'd closed one chapter and started writing another. If you followed my journey to the end, I want you to understand something. This isn't just another dad revenge tale where a father strikes back at ungrateful children. It's a family story about what happens when love becomes enabling and silence becomes complicity. I spent 45 years building wealth, but I never taught my family the difference between earning and entitlement. I gave them everything, and in doing so, I gave them nothing. God blessed me with success, but I failed to pass down the one lesson that mattered: responsibility. Looking back at my own family story, I see where I went wrong. I should have said no more often. I should have let them struggle earlier when the stakes were smaller. Instead, I waited until the damage was catastrophic, and my dad revenge became the only language they understood. Don't be like me. Don't wait until your children are 34 years old to teach them accountability. Don't mistake silence for peace or spending for love. And if you must take action, if dad revenge is the only path left, make sure it leads somewhere other than bitterness. Mine led to a terrace in Tuscany, but it could just as easily have led to a courtroom with no winners. This family story isn't a blueprint. It's a cautionary tale. Teach your children early, set boundaries, and when they fail, let them feel it while you're still there to catch them. If this resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts, hit that subscribe button, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the end. I want to be clear, parts of this narrative contain fictional elements crafted for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences. One last thought. Freedom isn't something you give. It's something you earn.